all over. Geronimo's under. And Cincinnati has won the World Championship, beating the Boston Red Sox 4-3. The Reds win it in Fenway Park.
2 balls, no strikes, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th. This could be it, left field. George Foster makes the catch. That's it. The Cincinnati Reds win the World Series. It was a sweep. The final score, Cincinnati 7, the New York Yankees 2.
Good day to everybody, and welcoming back on to the Reds Country Radio digital show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, is Red Raider Doug. How the hell are you, sir?
Doing good.
We've got a lot to talk about, a little time to get into it. So let's go ahead and fire away. Let's talk about Elly and him breaking some, setting some records in the world of baseball this week. What you got for us?
Well, it's been a heck of a week for him. First record that he broke, and a lot of people aren't aware, is he is as of now, the fastest player to have gotten to 50 steals, 90 runs, and 50 steals, 90 runs, and one other that just passed my mind, but he's the fastest player to get to those marks in his career. He's now he did it in 122 games, which has shattered the record previously set by Trey Turner, who was at 152. So he's in the same category this part of his career, the same as Mike Trout, Trey Turner, Barry Bonds, and also two Reds, Eric Davis and Joe Morgan.
Wow. I mean, that's a mouthful right there, isn't it? The Reds.
I'm sorry. I was going to say
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it right on top of that too. In just the month of April, he is the fastest in 105 plate appearances to hit. Let me see, with it 20 home runs. He's now got 20 home runs. 10 home runs, 7 to 15, 15 RBI, 18 RBIs, and 17 steals, which is the fastest in 105 plate appearances. And there's only 5 other players that have hit that mark within that time. And that also includes Eric Davis, Joe Morgan, Carlos Beltran, and Mike Trout.
All right. So looking at the big picture, they are, focusing in on this weekend. They're in Texas, taking on the Rangers. Never an easy place to play. Can take a taxi on your bullpen. And after that, we head out of Arlington to head to San Diego, which they're not playing the best baseball right now, but they're still a formidable opponent. And then looking at what they have the rest of the week, they come home for a big 3-game set against the Baltimore Orioles, which will be followed up by Arizona at home. So we'll cut it off there. About the next 2 weeks is what we'll talk about. You got at Texas, you got at San Diego, and then home against Baltimore and home against Arizona. That is going to be a very, very tough litmus test, because you're sitting there. If we look at the standings real quick, right now, as of today, and we are recording this show on Saturday, April 27th, the Reds are 3.5 back of Milwaukee. I don't know how the hell they're doing it. I still think it's smoke and mirrors, but they're doing it. The Cubs are 17-9, 3 games in front of Cincinnati. That's the one that I'm more concerned with long-term. Mm-hmm. But hell, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Milwaukee is, maybe this is sustainable, and I'm just not. I don't know how Milwaukee's doing it. It's very Tampa Bay Ray-like. And then you got the Pirates, who are hanging around. They're game and a half back of the Reds, and the Cardinals are flailing at the bottom of the division, 2 games back of the Reds and 5.5 back of the division lead. What's your biggest takeaway as we are, 26 games into the season so far for the Reds?
My takeaway right now is I'm pretty happy considering that we're really playing with one arm but tied behind our back. Without Friedel, without McLean, we're still managing to win games and win series. My biggest concern is right now our bats are really cold. I mean, we've had a little bit of sickness running through some of our starters, but overall, outside of Elly De La Cruz, we're not getting that much offense, and that's gonna concern me, and that's got to change with all these really difficult series that we've got coming. We've got an entire month of May,
especially playing in the Great American Small Park. When it starts warming up, that's going to be a problem.
Exactly. And if you can't get any offense at home, that's something you got to keep an eye on.
What's really tough about this stretch, and we'll take it. Geez, let's take it to the middle of May. When they get back from the trip to Texas, San Diego, and get the homestand, which is great, but you're playing Baltimore and Arizona, right? Two of the favorites to make it deep into the playoffs, and then go back on the road for what it looks to be, was it 6, 7, 8, 9? Yeah, it's a 10-day road trip out west again. You don't normally see it bookended that way. You don't normally see your West Coast trips bookended that close together, where they're going to play at San Fran, which is always a pain in the ass to play at, right? Because the field itself, the Giants are a pesky team, and it can do damage to your bullpen. And then you go to Arizona and then finish it with a 4-game series at the Dodgers.
Yep.
And then come home, and they're going to have to play the Dodgers really quick about a week later.
Yep.
It's a brutal stretch. I'm looking at this stretch, and realistically, what big picture, what I'm looking at is, where is this team at after the Cubs series that ends in Chicago on June 2nd? Sunday, June 2nd, they finish in Chicago. And then they'll go to Colorado, and then they get the Cubs again for a 4-game series, blah, 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 blah. I won't go through the whole schedule. But just looking at this test, where, strangely enough, two of the softer landing spots is at home against San Diego and at home against the Cardinals. And typically those are perennial powers, but the Padres, they're not playing bad baseball right now. They're a game under 500. But my biggest question is, with the Padres and playing them twice over the next few weeks, their pitching depth is very suspect, and they're going to try to club their way to wins. Arizona's off to a bit of a slow start, but they're still 12-15. No time to panic. Dodgers are doing what Dodgers do. Man, find someone who looks at you the way MLB looks at the Dodgers. I mean, it doesn't matter what the hell is going on. Their social media team is always tongue-bathing the Dodgers. They put this big thing out this morning about how the Dodgers were on, I believe, a 5-game winning streak, and they had outscored their opponents. It was something ridiculous. But what they left out of that is it was against the Blue Jays last night, who were at the bottom of the AL East. And prior to that, a 3-game stand road trip to the Washington Nationals. And what started it was a win against the Mets at home, but that was to stave off getting swept by the Mets. So MLB, their social media team, like, no, look at the Dodgers are unbeatable, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, last weekend you almost got swept at home by the New York Mets. Okay, you blew them out in the final game. At that point, the Mets were throwing in, the back of their, or I guess the front of their bullpen. to get through that. And then a 3-game sweep in Washington, which, by the way, 2 of those games were really dicey. Really dicey. And okay, you blew out Toronto yesterday, but Toronto sucks.
Well,
So, what?
Toronto couldn't get a hit if they played their games in a bomb shelter. So that proved absolutely nothing.
This is the equivalent of a Big Ten team putting out a big flex at the beginning of the season when their first 3 games are out of conference against Bowling Green State, and Bowling Green Tech, right? Like, all a bunch of directional colleges. It's the equivalent of that. But man, MLB, they never miss an opportunity to tongue bathe the Dodgers. Meanwhile, if you look around the rest of the league, Phillies have won 8 of their last 10. Braves have won 4 in a row, 9 of their last 10. We just talked about Milwaukee and the Cubs. They've both won 7 of their last 10.
Yeah.
A lot of good baseball being played. Dodgers are 6-4 in their last 10, but because they've won 5 in a row, it's, stop the presses! Stop the presses!
Now, an interesting thing you brought up with Phillies. Now, the one thing that came out of our series with the Phillies, because we play 2 and we don't play the Phillies for the rest of the year, is the Reds do have the tiebreaker. If during the season, for some reason, we're in a tiebreaker situation to make the playoffs against the Phillies, we've got the edge, because we took 4 of 6, even though we did split the last series. We won 2 or 3 in that.
If you're tied with the Phillies, you're not fighting for a playoff spot, but it could decide home field advantage.
Yes.
Because the Phillies are doing what everyone expects them to do, but they never do, which is play well during the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've got a good baseball team. No Braves fan will ever tell you that they don't. Their biggest question mark has been getting their head out of their ass before June and not burying themselves so far back in the division. So they're hanging in, not just in the NL East race, they're 2.5 back of Atlanta coming into this morning. But when you consider the fact that Atlanta has the best record in baseball, that means they're 2.5 back of the best record. They are just a half game behind the Dodgers. So Philly's off to a hot start. I'm a little surprised by the NL Central. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little surprised that we have 3 teams above 500 right now, and the Pirates are just below it. And that's after a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah. Pirates
have lost 8 of their last 10. I think the shine is off. The Pirates are going to pirate. They've got some good pitching. They've got some exciting young players. But Pittsburgh just doesn't score runs. They are, I don't have this ranked, but I can look at a quick scan. They've scored 109 runs in 27 games. To give you an example, I won't pick the Braves because that's low-hanging fruit. Let's just pick another team in their division who's played the same amount of games. Milwaukee, they're not considered an offensive juggernaut. They've scored 134, so they've outscored the Pirates by 15 runs in the first 27 games of the season. Or actually, Milwaukee's only played 25 games. So they've played 2 less games and have outscored Pirates by 15 runs. The Reds have scored 128 runs, and they've played 1 less. And speaking of runs scored, what in the hell is going on in St. Louis? Goldschmidt and Arenado look to be on the senior tour. They don't have it. They didn't have it last year. Everyone wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. I knew it was fool's gold when they were the primitive favorite going into the season to win the division. And then shortly, about 2-3 weeks before the season started, you saw the money shift and it went to the Cubs. The Cardinals are a bad baseball team. No one's really paying attention to the fact that they've scored 91 runs in 26 games.
Yeah. We had said at the beginning of the season.
That's barely over 3 runs a game.
Yeah. I taught, yeah, at the beginning, see, talking about how the Cardinals were going to be the head of the division. I warned everybody at the beginning of the season they were junk. I told you they'd be anemic at best, and they're going out of
You know
their
what
way
they
to
should
prove
have
it
done?
right.
But they're too bullheaded because it's the Cardinal way, as they say.
Exactly.
They should have tanked. But they went out and they signed Sonny Gray, who's pitching well. Kyle Gibson, who's doing Kyle Gibson type things. He'll get out there and get you a quality start, and he'll give you an opportunity to win, but you don't normally win because the offense is trash. And then they went out and get old fat ass Lance Lynn. It's just a shell of his former self. A big shell, but he's a shell of his former self.
Yeah, I watched him the other night. I couldn't believe I didn't even recognize him.
Oh, he's a hoss now. I mean,
Yeah.
he's never been a little guy, but he ate his weight in, I guess, St. Louis ribs while he was out there. I don't know what's been going on all season, but it hasn't been the gym.
I thought
And
Buck Farmer was a big boy until I saw Lance Lynn.
I'm telling you, Lance Lynn, Daniel Vogelback, let's get that sumo wrestling championship. Let's go. Let's go. So for all intents and purposes, unless something dramatic happens, I'm saying St. Louis is done. And I know we're only 26 games in, but they are done. You've scored 91 runs. And I'm not saying you can't go out and win a series during the season. Hell, you might even be able to sweep someone you shouldn't even be competitive with. But they are cooked. 91 runs. That pitching staff isn't good enough. Oh, and by the way, can we talk about how they let Jordan Hicks go? And that SOB's out there throwing dimes out in San Francisco. You wanted a starting pitcher. Why didn't you just transfer him to your starting rotation? You could have paid him a hell of a lot less. You had him in-house. You traded him away at the deadline. Where did he go? Toronto, I think. And San Francisco, San Francisco's not lighting the world on fire. This is what the Giants do. They'll analytically find a way to keep themselves in the conversation. They look at it as, we're trying to figure out how to win today, and then we'll adjust tomorrow. And that's their approach every single day. They don't have the look that some of these teams have, where they're looking at the big picture and we'll punt this game, we'll punt that game. No. The Cardinals, and when I think of anemic offenses, I think of San Francisco. The Cardinals, in one less game, have scored 19 less runs than the San Francisco Giants. That is a bad offense. I take Jorge Soler out of the conversation, and most fans don't know that he went there. You probably can't name three bats in the San Francisco lineup. And they're outscoring the Cardinals, so screw the Cardinals, are done. Pittsburgh's a fun young team to watch, but let's be honest, they're not going to be able to do it for 162 games. So it is what we thought it would be, a three-man race. It's the Reds, it's the Cubs, and it's the Brewers. And the biggest thing to me is the Reds have to keep their head above water and stay in that fight, because I do believe eventually the Brewers will come back to the pack. I don't believe that their offense is as good as they're playing right now.
The only thing I like coming into the series, thinking about who we have to play in the month of May, Arizona's good teams as they are, they're kind of down right now, and I'd love to get on top of them and get a series win against them now while they're kind of slumping. I'm not really worried about the Padres. The Reds are really good against the Padres. We play some of our best baseball against the Padres. It's weird. It's kind of like I feel like we live rent free in their heads. So I think the key to the series, if we can jump up top, win those series with the Padres, win that series with Arizona, I think we can at least coming through the month of May into June, at least at 500.
So looking at what the Brewers are at right now for the next couple of weeks, right? because trying to make up ground on them. They finish up their series at home against the Yankees. They'll face Carlos Rodon and Marcus Stroman. Yankees got a puncher chance of winning both of those games, especially since that game last night went to extras, right?
Yep.
So they'll is Michael Tonkin with the Yankees now?
Yes.
That's funny. He was with the Mets. He signed with the Mets, but they must have DFA'd him. He's really not. I'll tell you what, if someone wants to pick up a guy and they get DFA'd, Tonkin's not a bad guy to eat innings when games are out of control. So if you see him out on the waiver wire, Reds, and you want a guy who's going to eat innings for you and keep you in games, like when a game gets out of control, your starter gets knocked out in the third inning, he can bridge you to the sixth, and he'll keep you within puncher's distance. You know, he can go out there and give you three. He's not always going to go three scoreless, but he'll go out there and give you three, give up one, maybe two, and keep you in the game. He did it for Atlanta for a few years. I'm telling you right now, Atlanta's bullpen is so good they couldn't keep him. But he's not a bad pitcher. He really isn't. He's got a funky delivery, and in certain nights he's unstoppable or untouchable. Okay, so back to the Brewers. They then host Tampa Bay for 3. That won't be easy. Tampa Bay's not what they have been, but they're we all know they're a pain in the ass. I expect every one of those games to end 2-1. Don't know who's going to win, but they're going to win. It's going to finish. Then to start off May, after that Tampa Bay series, at the Cubs, at the Royals. That's going to be tough. And then somehow they come home and play St. Louis and Pittsburgh back-to-back.
I know.
Who's making this damn schedule? Bud Selig? Unbelievable. But hopefully they'll drop some there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Brewers, the way they're playing right now, I mean, they had to made some kind of deal with the devil or something, because nothing they do makes sense why they're winning. I couldn't begin to even understand why they're winning at all. They shouldn't be. There's nothing on paper. There's nothing that tells me that the Brewers should have the record they have right now.
The one thing I will say, just looking at it in advance without giving you a big breakdown of it, it appears that Milwaukee's schedule is much tougher after the All-Star break.
Thank God.
Take it with a grain of salt. I mean, this is a quick scan, but they're going to have 2 series against the Braves. They're going to play Cincinnati. How many times do they play the Reds? They've got 7 games against the Reds, 4 in Cincinnati. That's a big series. That's a Labor Day weekend.
And hopefully by then we'll have Friedel. We'll have Friedel and Friedel back playing center field. So some of the injuries and sickness we have we should have healed up by then. So we should be even a better team by the time we get to that series. So
they're going to finish the year off with 2 series against Arizona, and they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives. Listen to this stretch that they're going to have. When does it start? September 10th. So they come off of the series at home against 2 series at home right after the Red series I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
They're at home against St. Louis and Colorado. I'm like, what the hell, man? But anyways, after they come out of that, at San Fran, at Arizona, both those teams should be fighting for a wild card. So I don't think they'll just have packed it in, right? Then they come home, Philadelphia and Arizona again. And then they finish off at Pittsburgh and at home against the Mets. Mets may be fighting for something. Probably not, but they could be. But at Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's going to give it their all just to beat the Brewers. They're not going to just lay over. But all in all, it's a tougher road that first half than the second half. But just out of blind look, it looks like they've got fairly – this schedule doesn't feel like they play everybody when you look at it. That's all I'm saying. They're playing a lot of Angels in there, a lot of Blue Jays. They're getting a lot of White Sox in the beginning of the year, Marlins. Hopefully by the time they go to Houston May 17th, the Astros will have gotten their head out of their ass and be playing good baseball, because
Well, that pitching
We need a sweep.
rotation is so decimated. So I can understand they can't stop anybody from scoring. It's their problem.
And their bats have not woken up either. I'll tell you what,
No.
that to me is probably the biggest shock of the early going is Houston being, where are they at right now this morning? They are 12 games under 500. 12. They are 7-19. They're on a 5-game losing streak. And I was watching a clip of a podcast this morning, like flipping through TikTok or one of those. And there was a guy on there. Man, he looked familiar, but I honestly can't remember who it was. And he was trying to tell the girl that he was on there with not to worry about it because these are the Astros and they're going to wake up and they're going to bounce back and they're da. I'm like, look, it's not just the fact that you're 7-19. It's the fact that the rest of the league is not playing as poorly as you are. And you're going to have to play lights out the rest of the way, even if it starts today, to be able to make up this. Doug, they've got 3 more wins than the Chicago White Sox. And we're talking about the White Sox being an all-time bad team.
Yeah.
The only team in the American League that has a worse record than the Houston Astros is the White Sox. They are 3 games back of the Los Angeles Angels. They have the same record as the Colorado Rockies. We just talked about how big of a trash team St. Louis is. St. Louis would be 3.5 games in front of them if they were in the same division right now. They've only scored 102 runs in 26 games. That's terrible.
Oh, that's beyond horrible.
I'm starting to look. I got a ticket that I put together as a parlay of Braves, Yankees, Astros, and Dodgers all winning their division. And doing that, it basically gave me a 1-to-1. I felt like those were pretty fair. I felt like the Central was wide open in both leagues. I'm starting to think whatever the hell I've got available, I need to cash out because Astros ain't catching them. The other 3 are probably going to win their division. Maybe not the Yankees, but I feel like the Yankees pitching is going to outlast Baltimore. But I'm going to say it right now. You know, I'm putting my name on it. Houston Astros will not make the playoffs. They're done. You can't be 7-19 and relying on a 41-year-old pitcher, the oldest man in baseball, to be your savior. And everyone's overlooking the fact the attrition that they've had in leadership over the last few years. Dusty Baker was able to hold it together. Dusty Baker's not there anymore. They start looking around. They start double guess themselves. And it's also probably got to be a tired group of guys, right? 7 years in a row in the ALCS. That's never happened before. So I start thinking of teams that are like in the NBA, right? Where you see, because in the NBA, it's very common for the same dominant teams to make it deep into the playoffs every year. Sometimes, man, you just run out of gas. You're not motivated. You're not clicking. So, anyways, enough about the Astros. If you're 3 games in front of the White Sox, you suck. By the way, the White Sox, through 26 games, want to take a guess how many runs they've scored this year?
Ooh. I would say maybe like 88.
65.
Oh, good Lord.
What? It's not even 3 runs a game. I saw a stat about a week ago, so I don't know how current it is now, but at the time, they had only scored over 3 runs twice at that point. Wow. You're giving
that's
your
what you
team
get
no
with.
shot. And do you know that they just DFA'd Kevin Pillar?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's what you get when you start DNFing all these players and tearing your team apart. That's what you get.
Somebody's going to pick up Kevin Pillar and have a nice bench piece. I
Mhm.
saw a clip of him. He was being interviewed by someone, and anyways, the question was his reaction to being DFA'd and difference between this year and last year and being on a contender with Atlanta. And the guy screwed it up because he said playing every day on a contender as opposed to going over to the White Sox, and that's not true. He played sparingly in Atlanta. He was the platoon, and a lot of times they still started Eddie Rosario over him. But he was on a winning squad, and I think he would still be there. If he would have taken the same deal, he would still be in Atlanta. And he said, the way he put it, he said, I fell for the narrative and the trick that I was going to play every day and that we're going to have a chance to win. And that's just not simply the case. So anyways, it'll be interesting. I still think Pillar is a good backup stick for somebody.
Yeah.
But back to the Reds. I don't know. I'm just saying, keep that in mind. If you have an injury, someone goes down for the Reds or whatever. Pillar, one thing in Pillar is he is a good teammate. He's a good, and he can still play the field. He still has speed. But I do think that he, at this point in his career, is a guy you would only start against left-handers.
Well, strange enough that you mentioned Pilar because another player that we did sign because of our injuries was Espinal. And Espinal, overall, he's been okay because he's known more for his glove than his bat. But he had a fantastic series against the Philadelphia Phillies. I think he was hitting 400 in that series with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs in that series.
He's already paid for his. He's already paid for his entire contract just off that series.
Yep. Yeah, that's why, and he played decently yesterday overall. I mean, nobody scored anything, but he still contributed. So Espinal's in that same category as Pilar. Is all I'm saying.
I could see Pillar ending up somewhere like in a San Francisco or something where they traditionally just platoon. I can see that. I still think San Francisco was nuts to let Jock Peterson go.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
He didn't sign for much in Arizona. And he's still a good stick from the left side. He would have been a perfect 1-2 combo in left field with Jorge Soler.
Yep.
I believe they did that before and came home with the World Series ring. Back to the NL Central. You anything else that you want to hit up before we start heading towards the plate?
No, it just it's going to be like I said, it's going to be a grinding May going into June. But overall, I have a lot of confidence, especially playing the Padres, the Diamondbacks. I'm not too worried. I'm more worried about the Giants and the Dodgers towards the tail end of this grind that we're going to go through than anywhere else. But I think when we come back and talk about it again, I think the Reds will still have their head above water. They'll be at least 4 or 5 games above 500.
Baltimore scares the hell out of me, but it looks like we're dodging Corbin Burns that series. I don't see him slated. It's Suarez, Rodriguez, and Kramer. So that's, I mean, if you're gonna play the Baltimore Orioles in a 3-game series, that's kind of who you want to go against.
Yeah,
against those guys, but Gray Rod can get got to, and Corbin Burns by far is the guy on that mound. And already Craig Kimbrell's been shaky. I'm looking at, my biggest concern with this team right now is getting Nick Martinez out of that damn starting rotation. And Hunter Greene hasn't exactly been lights out. He's the pitcher on deck tonight.
He better start pitching better, because when you have announcers and guest commentators talking about how maybe this is somebody you just throw into your bullpen, talking about that maybe Hunter Greene isn't what we thought he was. He best perform because he's on the snide right now. Fans and even other former players, people are turning against him quick. He's been awful. I mean, he was supposed to come in with a new slider and a couple more pitches, and he's doing nothing. Just absolutely nothing.
Yeah, he gave up 4 runs against Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Only went 4 innings against Seattle. He had a good outing against the Mets, but that's the Mets. I mean, their offense stinks.
Yeah.
He's when we talked about this in the preseason, I'm a little surprised of you bringing him up, but I've been paying attention to him. I just don't know if he's ever going to live up to his hype.
I don't think so. And he's got to be worried too, because Andrew Abbott is slowly starting to come into that groove. Because the debate right now is who on the Reds starting rotation is becoming a true ace. And when you've got Lodolo, Ashcraft, and Abbott now,
for my money, right now it's Abbott, but Lodolo will eventually surpass him. And Ashcraft he's a steady 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You don't even need Hunter Greene to be an ace. You need him to be a solid 2 or 3. That's what you need, because Ashcraft should be your 4. Ashcraft should be your 5 in a team that wants to compete for a division.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hunter Greene has been so bad, Ashcraft is realistically the 3 right now.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah,
sometimes
and that's
guys are what they are, and that's what Ashcraft is. He's a guy that ground ball pitcher, trying to keep you in the game. He's a grinder. That's perfect for a number 4, number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Greene's got the stuff, but for whatever reason, he can't put it together. And I don't think it's at the point where you start thinking about putting him in the bullpen, but he's never going to get that long-term lucrative contract as a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball doing what he's doing right now.
Well, that's what everybody's mad about, because he played well at the beginning of last season and the Reds gave him a lot more money. And now, a lot of people are looking at, well, what am I getting for the money we gave you? We gave you an extension last year. What are we getting for it? We're getting nothing for it right now. So
how long does that extension go?
Oh, they just topped off. Let me see. They topped it. It wasn't a very long one. It was only because they've got Hunter Greene now. It was like a 2-year extension. They just sweetened his pot because the Reds don't give out money very often.
Right, because
so
you had the gotcha. I'm pulling up right now. 6 years, $53 million. And if this thing will ever freaking load, I can tell you when it Jesus. Anyway, 6-year, carrying a total salary. All right, so for whatever reason, Spot Track's not loading, but so 6-year, $53 million. I'm assuming that kicked in this year.
Yes.
So at the end of that, Hunter Greene would be around 30. So yeah, back to what I was talking about. If he wants the type of lucrative deal that a Max Fried's looking for at the end of the season, or like Carlos Rodon got a few years ago, he's going to have to wake up.
Yeah. Somebody's going to have to tell him to wake up, just like Spencer Steer told Elly Cruz when we were worried about him not playing well.
He'll
wake up.
He'll be so I was right. Finally loaded. He'll be 30 at the end of this contract.
Yeah,
and it carries through 2028. There is a club option, so he could be a free agent in 2029. But if he is, things haven't gone well, because the club option is $21 million, and in today's baseball, if they don't pick up the $21 million club option, then you're not pitching well at age 29.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty So they're getting him for a pretty good deal, but it was to avoid arbitration over the next few years. So I think he might have been a dope for doing it. But $3 million this year, 6, 8, 15, 16 respectively, and then the club for 21.
Mm-hmm.
He does have escalators for incentives. But if he wins the Cy Young, yeah, that's happening. Woo! First of all, he doesn't get much of an escalator. It's like a 1 or 2 million, depending on the year, for if he gets to the Cy Young or he's in the top 3 voting. That ain't happening, my man. That ain't happening. If that's how they sold you on it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your walk-off, sir?
Oh, my walk-off, what a difference 2.5 weeks when we were sitting here last week talking about Elly's a bust. What is wrong with him? And here we are, and he's broken 3 major records. He's now on pace to steal at least 120 bases. Just what a difference 2 weeks makes. Somebody finally got to him and just playing some amazing baseball. I've never seen someone
you know that I was never concerned about it. The kid's phenomenal.
Yeah, and he still hasn't even reached his ceiling yet. Hasn't even
better version of O'Neal Cruz is what he is to me. He's more talented version of O'Neal Cruz. O'Neal Cruz is a solid baseball player. He's going to have a good long career, but O'Neal Cruz to me doesn't bring to the table what Elly brings. Elly is the whole 9 yards.
Look, all I know is he's playing so well that he's got Reds Hall of Famers coming to the game to watch him. You got Barry Larkin and Eric Davis watching him every day because they do a podcast thing, and they're talking about they haven't seen talent like that in their lifetimes as players, and they're not even referring to their own careers, and they're talking about how amazing it is to watch this kid. Eric Davis especially, it's like he hasn't even filled his frame out yet. He's still a boy. He hasn't even really truly become a man yet in baseball terms.
Well, I mean, what is he, 21, 22, somewhere in that neighborhood?
He's 21.
My walk-off for you is the guy that I'm enjoying watching the most right now is Spencer Steer. He is filling in phenomenally, considering all the injuries that they've had, and they're trying to make it to August. I believe it's August with McLean, right?
Yes.
Look, he's not lighting the world on fire, but he does have an 838 OPS. He's got 3 home runs, okay, 6 stolen bases, 19 RBI, and that plays. And I think he's been a bit of an unsung hero. They need to at least win one of these next 2 in Texas. Abbott versus Dunning on Sunday, I say they get that one. Greene versus Lorenzen on Saturday, that's going to be a toss-up. Lorenzen, a little better pitching. By the way, that game is nationally on Fox for folks who want to catch it. And then Monday, Ladola. So you get the Abbott, Ladola back-to-back, and they should get that one in San Diego. It's up against Waldron.
Mm-hmm.
You got to build this momentum because you know that Martinez is coming.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Martinez and Greene are broken up in the rotation when they're not going back-to-back, because that can really put a damper on your bullpen. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here and see y'all next time. I'll talk to Doug off air on when we can sit down and talk more Reds baseball, more National League baseball, more National League Central baseball. Become a country club member today. And come on, Reds, man. We need some momentum. Win in Texas. Win the series in San Diego. If you can get, I'll put the Texas one aside. The next 3 series, if we can get series wins, as they say, we'll be sitting in high cotton.
Yes.
All right. Y'all have a great one.
Lansford, good hitting Oakland third baseman, and Myers bringing it. And the pitch is hit in the air, foul, off first. Benzinger backing and calling. And the 1990 World Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds.
Bye.